Hi guys, with me again, Happyson. So today we're gonna talk about the Overdress tire list, which I've been promising to you for the last few weeks. But for the last few weeks, I've been a little bit busy for real work, real life stuff, and now I just got the time to bring this to you. So we're gonna talk about Overdress, and then we're gonna get into the tire list in this same video. Okay, so first let's just talk a little bit about Overdress and what step it has been. So with Overdress, it's really interesting because from all the card games that I have played, I never ever have a card game that got 10 decks straight out the first booster set. Maybe there is such card game, but maybe I haven't played them yet. But from all those that I have played, I don't see that there is 10 different decks, 10 unique decks from a single booster pack, which is really interesting, and that makes it better, a lot better than the last time we had our last reboot, which is the V series. If you remember, during the V booster set 1, we practically only had 4 decks, which is Kagero, Royal Paladin, OTT, and then Nova Grappler. So we only got those 4 decks, and the matchups soon become really boring because you only got so much matchups, and it becomes still really fast. And with these 10 decks, the interaction becomes much better. But if I had to say something that I don't like so far about Overdress is the over triggers. I don't really like over triggers, especially from a competitive standpoint. Imagine you are doing so much right things in building to your winning position, and they all get thrown away by a single over trigger. I don't like it from a competitive standpoint. From a casual standpoint, maybe that's good, I'm not really sure, but from a competitive standpoint, of all this Overdress stuff, I don't like the over triggers, that's for sure. But let's get that aside for now, and let's get started to the tire list that I've been promising you for a few weeks. Okay, so we're gonna talk from the very bottom first, the D tire. No, I'm sorry, it's actually in the C tire list because there is no S, there's only A, B, C. Yeah, no, A, B, C, and D. There's no S tire list in here because I don't think there's a deck that's really dominating the format as a whole and not beatable by any other decks. So let's start with the very bottom. The very bottom is in the D tier. In D tier, we got 2 decks, which is Eugene and Hex Orb. It's not necessarily that this deck is bad, it's just that I feel these decks do less than their other counterparts in their nations or even other deck in the format. I mean, like Hex Orb, basically you can set your top decks, and when you check a triggers, you can give another pump power, and also you get the rear guard that can stand. I think the name is Lepisto or something, I kind of forget, but you can do multiple attacks with that, which Bastion can do also with more effectively and with much more minimal resources, because Hex Orb to stand, they need Counter Blast, and Bastion they really need Counter Blast. We get that later, but I think Hex Orb just did less than Bastion, and Bastion is just way more lethal, more powerful than Hex Orb is. It's not necessarily that Hex Orb is weak, I just think that it did less than Bastion. So I'm gonna put it just entire D, and because people haven't really playing it on tournament also, that also helps in this tier list. If you don't get that many representative in the tournament, you will rank lower, of course. So Hex Orb and Eugene. Eugene is not really a bad deck per se. I wouldn't say it is a bad deck that would necessarily lose all matchup and something. Actually, Eugene is very resource effective. If I could say, you can put up soul really easy, and then you can spam Superior Call while retiring your opponent. And the deck is quite strong, but it lacks in finishing. If you compare it to the counterpart in Dragon Empire, which is Verina. Verina has much more high power line, and Eugene just doesn't compare that I know you can reach like 23k something in Eugene, and it's a 15k guard line, both in the vanguard and the rear guard. But I just don't think it's good enough for Orlan to finish the game quickly. You might grind the game a bit longer, and then uh, if you let Eugene grind the game for a long time, they might snowball you into something that you cannot get out of, that you getting controlled by the 3 bus critical, and your board is getting controlled by Eugene, and they keep just calling over stuff for free, and the snowball effect will have you losing resources, and your opponent gaining resources, thus you lose the game. That's actually the Eugene game plan of winning, and it's not a bad deck, but I just think it lacks a little bit of that finishing power. Maybe in the future booster sets, if they get like a bit of finisher, a bit of like a power hitter again, maybe it will be better. I don't know, we will see. And then we move on to the Tier C. And the Tier C, we got Magnolia and the Prison and Orpheus, so 2 brand gets is both on Tier C. Again, I don't think these decks are necessarily bad that I put them in Tier C. And I think for Magnolia, it just really need that little bit of blasting power. I don't think it necessarily have that much of a draw engine. It got like some superior call engine, and you can have a multiple attack which usually stops if your opponent checks a trigger, but that's what multiple attacks throughout the history of Vanguard do. If they got hit by a damage trigger, usually it stops, or at least becoming less effective. And for now, for the lack of better finisher, and I think Magnolia should be C. It's not really like a better finisher. I think it's good enough, but yeah, just like something. If you compare it to the top deck like Bastion and other deck that we will get into later, but I think it's just like something right now. So maybe in the future booster it might go up into tier list. The tier list is even though we split this into tier lists, right? But I think the gap between tier A, B, C, and D is not that much. The gap is quite small, I think, between decks. So it's a pretty good start for Overdress, and well, it's not really that big of a gap that you could win at all. So let's get through this. Now we get to Prison. So Prison is actually a good deck. You can it's a good control deck. You can control your opponent, and you have the triple drive and the power needed to out-resource your opponent, and you have the counter charge too. You can refill your sword with Bubble Mine and protect charge at the same time. And the triple drive really fills your hand fast, while you choking your opponent out of their resources with prisoning them. And if your opponent wants to get out of the prison, they have to pay either a soul blast or either a counter blast, and that really chokes the resource out of your opponent. And but the problem with this deck is people right now is kind of figuring out how to outplay this. So what I mean is it needs more effective way to prison things, and which is fine actually right now. But I think in the future, if they get like more ways to prison things, like in the special series, they get the card that can prison from the drop zone. That's good, and yeah, they need more cards like that, and then it should go up in the tier maybe in the future. I don't know, but right now it's pretty good. But again, people have found ways to just outplay it, especially with better decks. Like just for example, like the Barrow Magnets can just not drop any rear guards until they are sure they can kill off the opponent. So basically you left the prison with zero card in the prison. Maybe Barrow Magnets is not such a good example. Maybe the best example is like Very nice. Usually having a bad matchup against prison, because when you overdress and they prison your overdress, it's like 2 units in the prison with a cost of single prison. And This really chokes out the Fairy decks because Fairy decks, it's so much controllable for their play, and by choking it out of their resource, they didn't have anything late game. They don't have any souls, they don't have any counter blast. It's a really bad matchup against Prison, but you can outplay that by playing a line of Vanguard and then a line of two Trickstar in one line that has racist, that has resist in their skill, so you can prison them out of the rear guard circle, and you just push a little bit, green a little bit. After you are sure you are in your kill range, then you do a persona red, then you do an overdress, and you try to wipe out your opponent. Even if they survive, you already won the resource battle, and if they prison you, you can just get it out and finish them off in the next turn. So basically, the prison problem is when you don't have any card in your prisons, it's really hard for you to scarce out resources. So instead of choking out your opponent of resources, you yourself getting choked out by your opponent because you don't have any triple drive, you don't have any plussing power, if you cannot get any cards in the prison, and that's the only problem this deck has right now. And the last deck in the C tier list is Orphis. Orphis is a typical grind deck, I think. It's very good with the also your calling of the tokens, the free tokens, and the big columns. But yeah, it's a typical grind deck, and you just able to attack 3 times, and your power not getting any bigger than a 30k power line unless you check a trigger or unless you do a persona right, and that's why it makes it a little bit repetitive playing the Orphis deck, because that's just all the decks do. The decks is all I do is calling out tokens, spamming out world for draw or for retire. It's a grind deck, and the main problem in Orphis is if your opponent has a way to generate resources in the middle of the game, and they can guard your lands and they can control the damage that you give them, you will find a hard time finishing your opponent actually, and it might endanger you to deck out. So decking out is a real problem in the standard right now, in Overdress right now, because you have 4 cards in your right deck and 46 cards in your deck. Right, so that's 4 cards less than you usually play in your normal Vanguard, and this might issue a little bit of a deck out, because I've seen so many times in my locals that people that aren't able to finish their opponent off just getting caught in a battle against time before their deck runs out. It's just like a ticking clock, and I've seen it countless times before. Especially with Orphis deck, when they cannot finish off their opponent, it's a deck that's really fragile to deck out if you cannot finish off your opponent, because you keep drawing with the world, and also you have like many hands in your many cards in your hands, because you don't really call them and you just only spam token, and maybe you will mind to refill your soul and counter charge. But if you can finish off your opponent, then it will be a long game, and you might get caught in a battle against deck outs. So that's the C tier list, and we're gonna move to the B tier list. The B tier list also consists of 3 decks, which is Zorga, Bruce, and Farina. So first Zorga I think has the highest ceiling from the deck in this tier, but for some reason it haven't seen much stops. Maybe because of the difficulty to play the deck. I'm not really sure, because I haven't played Zorga myself. I have played against Zorga a few times, like I've played like almost every week in locals against Zorga, so I kind of know the deck. I haven't tried it out myself, but I think it has the high ceiling, the highest ceiling in this tier, because you can do so much with Zorga with so little resources, because of the alchemy magic and the reviving from the drop zone. I think the deck has a high ceiling, but maybe the difficulty to play Zorga, what makes it doesn't really tops right now, or maybe just the lack of finish. I'm not really sure, but I'm gonna put it in A tier because it's actually been doing better than the other decks that I mentioned before. And then we got Bruce. I don't really want to put Bruce in B tier really, because from a normal perspective, from a normal common sense, you will say that the deck does nothing in his first grade 3 turn, and that might be bad. Other deck might outplay you, might out-resource you, might push you, and all the other stuff, especially if you are going second. But the fact is, Bruce is topping a lot of tournaments, not only in my locals, but also in Japan and in other countries too. You will see Bruce topping every now and then. So Bruce is actually a solid deck, especially if they go to the final rush, because 5 attacks with big columns is not something to scoff at, and can kill you really instantly, and they get like a good plus power too. So yeah, I'm gonna put Bruce in tier A, just because the fact that it really tops. The reality is, it is able to tops in various locals, in various countries. And the last in tier A is Farina, or the Nirvana decks, whatever you call it. I prefer to call it the Farina deck, because you play with mostly Farina on your wrist, that's right. And the problem with this deck is like much of the protagonist deck. It's kind of like the jack of all trade, but master of none. So you get big columns, but you didn't really have multiple attacks unless you can hit with your Valiante, but that is much more of a pressure unit rather than multiple attacking resource. So with the Farina deck, the problem is it's so much counter blast, and if you just overcommit in the early game, people will deny you out of it, and you will have no resources and having trouble finishing off your run. Now, the deck is actually quite simple, but it will punish you if you just overextend, or yeah, it will punish you if you do some ineffective plays. So I think the deck is kind of easy, kind of hard to play. I'm not really sure, but because I use like Farina every week in the locals, I kind of get the feeling that if you have a good hand, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to be able to hold your resources and drop them at the right time, because resource management is really critical in Farina, because if you just look at, hey, I can draw 2 with these cards, and you just eat your counter blast away with that, and your opponent will use that against you in the late game, and you won't have anything to finish them off it, because your big power lines comes from a single counter blast, and your draw power also comes from a single counter blast. So every one of your important plays comes from a single counter blast. That's what the deck is all about, and I think resource management is very critical in this deck. This deck is up there with the best, but I just think that the deck not be able to constantly beat on the deck that is on the A tier, which is these 2 decks that we are going to the A tier. That was the B tier, so now we are going to the A tier, which is Bastion and Baron Magnus. And so 2 top decks is Bastion and Baron Magnus, for simple reason. These 2 decks, especially Baron Magnus, you will see that Baron Magnus has won a lot of events locally or some more bigger ones. I've seen Baron Magnus wins a lot in Japan too. So in Japan, that Baron Magnus usually comes in top 3 in any tournament that I've seen. At least there is one Baron Magnus in the top 3, and some of them actually won it. The deck is really good. The only problem with Baron Magnus is if your opponent check like 2 heal triggers, then you are in serious problem, because you might back out. Because if your opponent check 2 heal triggers, they can no guard of you and make the game longer. And because the game is longer, and you keep soul charging and drawing cards, it really put you on a risk to deck out. And that's just the only minus I see in Baron Magnus right now. Is the deck is so fragile to deck out if you haven't checked a heal. But if you didn't check any heal, or if you only checks 1 heal, this deck is really deadly. The Vanguard has multiple crits. It has 2 crits plus power in the Vanguard to extend in the Vanguard. So the Vanguard is actually quite a big line. It's 23 with a personal red and with the triggers. I usually like to put a booster in it in early or mid game, so it makes like 31k line, and making your opponent have really tends to drop the perfect guards to guard Bar Magnus, and you can chop out their perfect guard quite easily and make sure your opponent runs out of their perfect guards by late game. And they have big rear guards too if they manage to get to 15 soul, and of course a multiple attack too, while sucking all of your rear guard into the soul. So this deck does it all. The only problem is the deck size. That's the only problem in Baromax right now. And the last deck in this tier list, in the top 8 tier right now, is Bastion. So Bastion doesn't really use any counter blast or soul blast to finish your opponent off. You only need to check a great tree. And if you check a great tree and a trigger, that's really hard. I'm just telling you that it's really hard if you haven't get to play Bastion. It's really hard. And what makes Bastion so powerful is that because you don't finish your opponent with Counter Blast, you can use your Counter Blast to draw cards from your deck, to getting resource from your deck. And that is the most powerful thing about Bastion right now, because you can use all your Counter Blast to draw cards with Alden and with the Order. So let's say you use 2 Counter Blast to draw 2 cards every turn, and you have full shot that is resist unit and also able to counter charge and solo charge on hit. That's really powerful against like some prison deck. Your opponent can prison full shot, and against Eugene deck, your opponent can retire the full shot. Full shot is a really powerful card, and of course Alden is also a powerful card with 5k when he attacks continuously during the turn. So if you attack 2 times, that means that he got plus 10k, and you got also the draw 2 from Alden, and Bastion didn't use any counter blast again. So if you run out of counter blast, you still be able to play effectively into your late game. This is the most powerful thing about Bastion, I think. And the single thing that makes Bastion really deadly is the plus 2k in his skill. I don't get why they should put a plus 2k in his skill. So all your great trees is 15k in your turn. I think that's not necessary, right? But they decide to put it there, and if Bastion goes first, that's really deadly, because like 15k to your 10k Vanguard at grade 2 is a 10k guard, and if you stand it with Bastion skill, that's 25k power, which is 20k guard. And it's really hard to guard. We are not mentioning the trigger yet, but that is really hard to guard in the early game and can get you to lethal really quickly. And even if that didn't kill you, that should at least put you into like 4 damage, sometimes 5 damage if they check a trigger. And next turn you cannot really kill the Bastion because he should have quite a huge hand, because the drawing power, he draw 1 from the right line and he draw 2. But if you give him to counter blast in the early game, but if you don't give him the counter blast, you cannot really kill him off from 1 damage. So you already give him anyway. That's a hard thing against Bastion if you're going second. I think if you are going first, you have quite a good chance against Bastion. It's not necessarily a deck that you cannot beat, but if you are going second against Bastion, that it's really hard deck to beat, because of the lethal power it got during your grade 2 turn and his first grade 3 turn, and then after you cannot finish him, next turn he just personalize it, and that's game, because you couldn't mass enough shield to guard the Bastion from his skill turn early in the game. And that's just what I thought about it. So reflecting on what events that have unfolded in so many shops and some countries, you see that in a few tournaments that these decks usually tops is like Bastion, Baromax, Bruce sometimes. So what I see is that 3 decks really is a favorite among people. It's not necessarily that this deck is unbeatable, but I just think that these decks win more consistently than the others. And that's my tier list. So just to recap, in the tier D we have Eugene and Hexor. In tier C we have Orpheus, Prison, and Magnolia. In tier B we have Farina, Bruce, and Zorga. And in tier A we got Bastian and Baron Magnus. And that's it, folks. That's from the tier list this time. It might change a lot by the time Booster Set 2 comes out, and I hope it changes a lot and it shuffles things out a bit, because we got 2 new right legs also, which is not so new in Draconic Overlord and Phantom Laser Dragon, but we're gonna see how the Booster Set 2 will impact the meta list and the tier list as a whole. And we're gonna see if it really makes any impact to the meta skin and be able to produce a new top deck at the format. Okay, so that is the tier list, and I will see you at the next video. Don't forget to like and subscribe this video.